Hi, I'm Noam Wasserman, Dean of the SciSim School of Business at Yeshiva University. I was a longtime professor at Harvard Business School, an entrepreneur, and a venture capitalist. I wrote the bestseller, The Founder's Dilemmas.
And I'm Charlie Harary. I've been working with companies for over 10 years. And that book, Founder's Dilemmas, and the challenges faced by the 10,000 founders in it is the basis of this podcast. We are delving into the issues faced by startups to help you avoid the pitfalls that claim so many good companies.
Let's get started.
Welcome to the episode, everybody. Welcome to Founder's Dilemmas podcast. Last time we were here, last week, we had an incredible first interview with the one and only Uri Levine, founder of Waze. I'm back with the one and only, indefatigable Professor Wasserman. Professor, let's bring us back. What do we have today?
Hey. Thank you, Charlie. Great to be back with you so soon again. Uri, let's go back to a little bit of the early days and some of the timeline that you laid out about the idea coming, Rosh Hashanah 2006, and then the evolution on the way to the way in which you guys were able to launch when you got funding and things like that. Interesting observation you had about part-time founding and some of the problems around that. You said, this is page 15 of the book, starting a company is a leap of faith if you're not willing to sacrifice to give up your current salary, position, and title, then you're not deeply enough in love. If you don't quit and join full time, you're not showing enough commitment, which by and large will tell investors the same thing, that you're not committed. However, a few pages later, talk about that timeline. In 2007, you were working on it as a project and not yet a company. March 2008, when you got funding, you started the company. But in between, there was only you full time and your co-founders were not. So from what you had made 2007, the leap of faith that you were willing to make, you left your job, they followed once you raised capital in March 2008. So nearly 9 months, 10 months later for it. Did it worry you at all that your two co-founders weren't joining full time? What did it say in terms of their commitment to the company? And take us inside a little bit more of the founding team.
So we had this discussion somewhere in June or July 2007, and that was the decision that we took because I could afford that to myself and they couldn't, and I said, okay, you know what, let's do that this way. And so as long as there is setting of the expectations, then I would say it can work, right? And then what happened as soon as we get funded, and by the way, fundraising, if we define building a startup as a roller coaster journey, then fundraising is a roller coaster journey in the dark. You don't even know what's coming, right? And so it was way longer than what you think at the beginning, but it's usually, this is how long it's going to take. And so in that sense, I think that we were fully aligned there with the commitment when each one of us is actually going to make that leap of faith.
How do you know when and how much to fundraise? Meaning, when people have ideas, there's a certain amount of bootstrapping that goes on and trying to make it work yourself, trying to maintain and preserve some of the capital and the equity yourselves. How do you know when someone has an idea that's baked enough to go out and start fundraising and how much to give up and when you're supposed to really work it yourself and make it work and bootstrap it as much as you can to preserve as much as you can?
So there are two factors to it, right? And so the first one is whether or not you even need fundraising, right? Because if your business can become profitable from the first day, then maybe you don't even need fundraising. And in general, I would say, look, there are two combinations here, right? The theory and the practice. And in theory, I would say, look, if you need to raise capital, then what you really want to do is ask yourself, what do I need to demonstrate in order to raise the next round of funding? So what are the achievements that I need to achieve? And then build a plan to achieve that, and then assume that it's going to cost 50% more, and then takes additional 6 to 9 months of durations that it's going to take you to raise the next round, and this is the amount of money that you actually need to raise. The practice is you're going to raise whatever you are successful in raising, right? And it might be way different, and you are going to recustomize your plan accordingly based on the actual amount of money that you were able to raise.
Okay, one of the things that you're getting into with that is founder motivation. How much to raise is going to be based on what their aspirations are and some of the other things that are going into not just the business, but what the founders want to be able to accomplish with it. Let's get into a little bit your motivations. There were some very interesting comments that you had in the book. While in my case, frustration or waste could lead to my motivation, to my passion. In others' cases, it could be love, hate, or revenge. Like, where's your passion coming from, and the very rich set of possibilities about what is really driving that passion. Just to share with everyone here a gem that I thought in terms of founder motivation. Nir Zook, like not the Zook that we usually talk about, the founder of Facebook, but an Israeli Zook. He was the founder of cybersecurity company Palo Alto Networks. Why did that start? It started because he was one of the first employees at the Israeli cybersecurity giant Check Point Software. But he had a falling out with management. So back to the people side, back to the tensions that underlie almost any company is going to have to survive, the Ben Adam L'Chavero, the interpersonal challenges that they have. He built his new company to compete with Check Point. He called it Palo Alto Networks. If my passion is avoiding frustration at all costs, Uri said, his passion was revenge. It was even reported that he had a custom license plate made in California, CHKP KLR, Checkpoint Killer. So that every time he walks out to his car, he is reminded about the revenge possibilities, like the motivation and pouring fuel on that passion. And then Uri puts an exclamation point on it. In December 2021, the NASDAQ 100 index dropped Checkpoint from the listing. And who did they replace it with? Palo Alto Networks. So the ultimate revenge that Nir Zook was able to have. You can talk a little bit about the motivation that you were bringing to it, what you've observed about founder motivation.
So, so for me, most of the startups started with frustration. I ran into something that was really frustrating to me, and I told myself, no, there is no way that this is how things are working. And I actually allowed myself to remain frustrated for a longer period of time, because usually I don't. I'm not remain angry for a long period of time, but with these cases, I allow myself longer period of time so I can start to think about whether or not it's even worthwhile to solve that and address that. And usually what I would do during this period of time is I will go and speak with other people, try to understand if they have the same frustration, right? Because if they do, then it's a problem worth solving. If I'm the only one, then either I can go to a shrink or I can simply let it go and this is it, right? But if a lot of people actually have the same problem, then it's probably worthwhile to try to solve it.
It's interesting when you get into the problem of it, and in your book, a lot of times I know how much you hate waste, I know how much you hate waiting in line, and we all share that. In New York, we do that all the time as well. I guess the question becomes, and you also what you gave in the book, which I loved, was the concept of the toothbrush idea, that you have to use it consistently. As somebody, I'm sure people here, if you're sitting in this room, you probably have some entrepreneurial tendencies, which means you're probably thinking of your own ways of changing, doing, growing. Help us, if you can, take us past the problem that only lives in my head, that really isn't a problem worth solving, and when it transitions, or when you can transition it to something that's actually something that's worth spending enormous amount of time on.
So, so I want you to think of a two-dimensional matrix, right? And one dimension is going to be the size of the addressable market. So how many people or how many potential customers there are for that problem to be solved, right? Or for this solution to serve. If you think of Waze, then you will say all the drivers, right? So there are about 1.1 billion cars on the planet, and that's the addressable market. If you think of Move It, that is the Waze for public transportation, then there are 5 billion people using public transportation around the globe, not in the US, yes, in New York, but not in the rest of the US. And so obviously the addressable market is big enough. The second dimension, which is way more important, I call that the value that you bring. The value that you bring to each one of those potential customers. Now, these dimensions can be measured by either frequency of use, and Waze is a perfect example, right? You're using Waze. We built Waze in order for commuters to go to the office back and forth, right? So this is twice a day, and this is where it's not me that called that the toothbrush model. It was Larry Page that basically say Waze is like a toothbrush. You use that twice a day. And this is why they eventually acquired Waze. So if the frequency of use doesn't work for you, then ask yourself, so how can I actually measure the value that I bring each time that it is being used, right? Or and the value could be measured by, okay, you know what, I'm going to save people a lot of money. Okay, a lot of money is value. I can save them a lot of time. I can empower them. Empower is hard to measure. So what does it mean that you empower them? And so you need to qualify and try to quantify the value that you create. Now, obviously, if what you're trying to do is going to create a lot of value to a lot of people, then this is definitely going to be a winner, right? And at the same time, I would say if this is very little number of people and very little value, then don't even bother that, right? Those are losers, right? The challenge is that most of the things are actually either have large addressable market with low value or low addressable market with large value. Now, if you own the large addressable market with low value, don't start. The low value is going to be a barrier. If you are with high value, do start.
Okay, you mentioned Larry Page, Google, the acquisition. Let's get into a little bit of that. The headlines were, in a lot of ways, the prominent part of it. The one-page term sheet you got from them, the one-week deadline that you faced, the yes that you gave them. But it was also preceded by 6 months before you had gotten an offer from them, said no to that. And in between, what changed? What were the dynamics? Talk to us a little bit about inside what happened with that exit.
So I will start with a general perspective, and occasionally entrepreneurs ask me whether or not when is the right time to sell, and so I would start by saying that the right time to sell is when you get a proposal, right? If you don't get a proposal, it's not the right time to sell. Right? You don't sell your company is being bought. And then I would say ask yourself 3 questions, right? Is that going to be a life-changing event for you? Yes or no? If yes, start to consider it favorably. The second one, is that going to be a life-changing event for the team that you actually hired throughout the years? If it is, then start to think about it even more favorably. If it's not, then make sure that it is, because you can actually still change the terms of the deal and make it a life-changing event for them. And then the last one, whether or not this company is once in a lifetime for you or not. And look, I knew that I'm going to build more companies. I actually started some of them before the acquisition. And so for me, it was obvious that if the company is being sold, I can actually go and build more startups, right? And this is exactly what I did. And so if this is a once in a lifetime company for you, then keep it. If you believe you're going to build more, then follow the building more passion. And these are the general rules. Now, obviously, they have, we said roller coaster, building startup is roller coaster journey, fundraising is roller coaster in the dark, and closing or M&A acquisition is roller coaster in the dark, upside down. And because it goes way more into the emotional part of it, the personal emotional, because you think about it from multiple perspectives, right? So okay, what does it mean for the company? What does it mean for the people? What does it mean for me? What does it mean for the company? What does it mean for the people? What does it mean for me? What does it mean for the people? What does it mean the day after? Now, I left. So for me, it doesn't mean anything the day after, right? But the rest of the team actually stayed. We were Waze before, and then we became Google, right? So obviously this is a change, actually not that dramatic, because we remained Waze, was part of the deal, and we remained in Israel, which was part of the deal as well, because because we realized that we have to stay in Israel. People don't want to go away, right? They don't want to relocate to other places, and maybe we can get 10% of the people will be willing to relocate, but the rest are not willing to relocate. So it's useless if there is a proposal that will tell us, okay, you need to move to Mountain View. We don't want to move to Mountain View. It's not going to happen. And so this is why Google came with the proposal and basically say you can stay Waze, you can stay in Israel, you can keep your mission of helping drivers to avoid traffic jams, and we can close the deal in 1 week.
Can you take us a little bit to that one-page term sheet? We live in a world of documents. As a recovering attorney myself, I spent most of my life in the beginning of my career writing 100-page documents for small little deals that were a lot smaller than yours. Take us a little bit to that feeling when you have one page, what they put on the page, and what did it feel like when you went down to the Google headquarters and this became realer and realer and realer?
So, for a second, I would say, going back to the beginning of your career, lawyers tend to overcomplicate stuff, right? And the reason is that the business model is broken, right? At the end of the day, you get paid by the hour, right? So you want to accumulate more billable hours, and that means that you're going to write more complex documents, so they will take you more billable hours. And the lawyers on the other side, they're happy with that, but now they have 100 pages to read, and they need to comment and redline 100 pages, and this has accumulated their billable hours, right? And so at the end of the day, it's a broken business model that could have been addressed differently. And by the way, one of the things that I always guide my CEOs is that when they get a term sheet for investment, usually there will be different deals of different terms of the deals, and eventually one of the terms is the company is going to pay the lawyers of the investor up to a certain amount of money. And what I'm telling them is that don't argue with the amount, just change that to be flat, this amount of money. Because otherwise they're going to have billable hours accumulated to this amount of money, and this is going to cost you not money, but actually a lot of time. And if you basically say this is going to be flat, then they would agree to do less work. So going back to the term sheet, one page, if I remember correctly, all the terms, that was $1.15 billion in cash, 1 week to close, Waze remain Waze remain doing what they do, remain in Israel, and that was about it. And I think that was it, right? And eventually it took them way more than 7 days. It was 10 days.
I guess when it starts with a B, I think the rest of the terms are less relevant.
Not exactly. So it's not all about money. A lot of it is about money, but it's not all about money. And in the fact that, and I'll give you an example. One of the most significant acquisitions of Israeli startup was Mercury Interactive being acquired by HP. And that, if I remember correctly, that was maybe even $4 billion. I don't remember the number, but it was a large acquisition. And the day that it was finalized, during the night, the HP people came to the office of Mercury and replaced the sign on the top of the building from Mercury Interactive to HP. And just imagine that you are a regular employee of Mercury Interactive, and the next day you find out that you are no longer Mercury Interactive. Right? And so there is a lot of personal emotions that has to do with the deal. And the fact that Waze remains Waze, and the fact that Waze remain with the vision with the same vision, was really helpful for all of us, and because this is what we wanted to do.
So the emotions of the exit, how easy was it to walk out the next day and not be associated with Waze anymore? Usually founders, we birthed the baby, we have trouble giving it up to the next adoptive parent. What were the emotions that you had about that led you to leave immediately, and also how did you deal with any of the cutting it off right there the next day after the acquisition?
I have 5 kids, right? And I think that the most rewarding thing is to see them grow up and become independent. Now, for me, that was the next part of the journey, right? I was ready for the next part of the journey. One of the startups that back then called FIEX and now it's called Pontera, we started that in end of 2012. But the idea, actually, I was thinking about it at the beginning of 2009, right? So it was 4 years until we actually were able to go into this journey. And I felt ready. I felt ready to walk away. And because I was already engaged with Moveit and FIEX at the time, it was really easy for me to continue my journeys.
So essentially having something attractive to run to was the key part of being able to shut the door and be able to move on to the next stage. Same kind of thing you talk a little bit in the book about changing the founder CEO, much tougher when they don't have something to go to versus being able to have the next of the companies. You talked about the next part of the journey. It was interesting to me in the book that you, in some ways, very publicly put down a stake. You said that in terms of your goal setting, between Waze's sale and Moveit's sale was 7 years. Between Moveit and whatever is the next of the exits, you're saying is going to be much less than 7 years. Seems to be like a very public declaration that we're going to be accelerating it. That's pretty soon. That's coming. Was that a motivational thing? What was the putting the stake in the ground? And how are we coming along on that?
So for a second, I would say if the markets would remain like it was in 21, then probably would have been there already. But with the tougher bearish market that we have, then it's going to be less than 7 years, but not today yet. And I think that it's not. You try to set that as an objective. It's not. It's going to be a result, and the result is of creating value. At the end of the day, your journey is about value creation. If you create a lot of value, you will be rewarded. And for a certain extent, I would say, even if you don't know what's your business model at the beginning, if you are going to create a lot of value to a lot of people, you will figure out the business model and you will figure out the value that you are going to get out of the journey. It's always about value creation.
Can you shift a little bit to the world of the VC? And I know that you also spend time helping companies. You spend time investing in companies. What are those muscles like? The muscles of being the founder and the singular focus of overcoming challenge and getting up and pivoting and that entrepreneurial path. For those that are thinking of the investor path, what do those muscles feel like to bet on the right companies? What do you look for? How do you know when to get in and when to get out? How does that work?
So for a second, I would say, if people will tell me, look, those that invested at Waze at the beginning, they were very smart, then I would say, wait a minute, there were actually hundreds that says no, right? And so obviously, and this is very different in the world of VCs versus the world of entrepreneurs, right? VCs are taking bets, and that's it. Vinod Khosla used to say that most of the investors create more damage than help. They're not necessarily there to help the company. Now, the founder doesn't know that at the beginning, and there is a gap in the expectation. The way that VC helps companies is by funding them. That's it. The rest, you will need to do yourself. If you expect them to run the company for you, they're not. If you expect them to participate in the execution, they don't. If you expect them to be able to support you dramatically, very unlikely. In some cases, yes, but this is going to be on a personal level. Their model is different. Their model is essentially to make multiple bets and one of them to take off. And when they make the bet on you, they think that you are the one. But until you demonstrate that you are the one, you're just a number.
Hey, why don't we open it up to questions?
Quick question for you. So what factors do you recommend people analyze or aspiring entrepreneurs analyze to determine when to leave the stability of their job and to go into the fray and focus on their problem, on solving their problem full time?
So the formula is simple, right? Entrepreneurs will go into the journey of building a startup when their passion is way more than the combinations of fear of failure and the alternative cost, right? So if you are a very successful lawyer at a big firm and you are making $2 million a year, the likelihood that you will give up on that is small. Now, if you just finish up school and you have no job, then the likelihood that you are going to give up on that is way higher, right? And so when the passion is dramatically higher than the combinations of fear of failure and the alternative cost is where it's going to happen. Can you accelerate that? Can you change that? I doubt that.
What do you recommend are some soft skills are good to focus on in the beginning of a career? A lot of us is sort of like still in school. Some of us are just starting out. What are stuff that helped you in the beginning of your career that you feel is important to sort of establish in early steps?
So, for Israelis, the beginning of their career is always the military service, right? And so obviously in the military service, there are a lot of soft skills that you learn from not giving up and into leadership and trusting your partners or the soldiers that are with you and building teams and so forth. But when my youngest son, he just finished his military service in last November, and he asked me, where shall I go? I said, go and work at sales. He said, but I'm not a salesperson. I said, this is one of the most important skills that you would like to learn. And so sales, working with other people, are probably the two most important soft skills that I would say.
Thank you.
Picking up on that, Uri, you have a great quote, nice 4-word encapsulation. When opportunity meets readiness, that is luck. How can students here be able to increase their readiness so that they're going to be able to have the luck that's going to be breaking in their direction?
Whoa, wait a minute. Isn't that a question for you? You should increase their readiness, not me. But I agree. Luck is always good, right? And we all know we are here in New York. Silverstein is the most important real estate guru these days, and he was asked one day how he becomes such a successful real estate builder, and he said, "Tell you the truth, this is 85% luck and 15% skills and capabilities." And then he was asked if he can change one thing, what is going to be? And he said, I'm going to replace the 15% skills with additional 15% luck. So luck is always good, right? But I define that as opportunity meets readiness, right? And if you're ready and the opportunity shows up, then you will say yes. And if you're not ready, the opportunity will show up and you don't even notice that this is an opportunity.
So it's some of the importance of foundation building, which you're exactly right, is the core of what we are doing here. Being able to prepare the students to build their foundations for the next decades of their life, and being able to have the experiences they can have both in the classroom and beyond, learning from people like you, Uri. So thank you so much for bringing that to them. It's actually been a theme in the weekly Torah portion that we've had throughout the last few weeks of what we've been learning. The criticality of investing, the criticality of taking the time, the criticality of building the foundation. Just to give you an example, we have the 10 Commandments, the most central part of possibly the Torah. The 10 Commandments is only 13 verses. When the Jewish people get to Mount Sinai, where they're going to get the 10 Commandments, the Torah spends 26 verses describing the preparation for it, twice as long. And also, if we look at the value of God's name, that is also 26. God is putting his imprint on preparation as a critical part of it. And that's what everyone here is doing, whether we're the faculty here who are helping you be able to prepare, or the students who are investing in their foundation, or the people like Uri and Adi who are making it possible for that to be able to happen. Uri, just to close before I hand it to Charlie with a little bit of a blessing, a little bit of bracha for you. You talk in the book about every time we have even a small success, we celebrate it. May you have many big celebrations both within the family, with the 5 children, and with the next of the things that you're going to be able to bring to the world to be able to impact them. B'atzlacha rabah with everything that you are doing.
Let me sort of, I want to see if I can capture something that you just said that put the whole thing together, if I can. And maybe that's something that we can think about, all of us here. You ended by saying that opportunity meets readiness. But readiness is hard because you have to be ready, which means you got to be doing a lot of work way before opportunity. And so in order to be ready, you have to have something you're willing to work on as you're walking through the desert before the opportunity comes. And usually that'll only happen if you have a mission. You're not going to work on something for as long as you need to get ready before opportunity comes if it's not a mission. And usually a mission requires helping other people. And usually the way you help other people is you solve their problems, which is probably why you got to love the problem and not the solution. And so it seems to me what you're saying here is when you're focusing on problems, you're actually focusing on people's issues and you're providing them value. And that's mission worthy, which will give you the juice to go the distance to get ready. So when the opportunity comes, you can make a major difference in the world.
So you are right. My mission is simple. It's about value creation, right? And I try to do that through the startups that I'm in. The easiest way, by the way, to create value is to solve a problem and simply make it easier, right? If the problem is clear and you solve that, it's guaranteed that you're creating value. And these are my startups. And for a second, I would say I want to think that the book is even more important than all of the startups because it's going to educate and help the next generations of entrepreneurs to become more successful. And when I wrote the book, this is what I had in mind. And in the epilogue, there is an ask for those that are going to read the book up until that point. And the ask is very simple. If you have learned something from this book, pay it forward. Teach someone something that will make them more successful.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate your time, and thank you for what you've done for the entire world. Thank you. And thank you for joining us on the podcast. You can always send us questions at foundersdilemmaspodcast@gmail.com. We hope all of you subscribe, listen to the next episodes. We look forward to an incredible Season 3 with the one and only Dean Wasserman. Thanks, everybody.